Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us. Today is February 12th, 2018. I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for reminding your friends and family that they can only find us on the internet. They have to type in, you have to tell them this, that they have to type in www.ucy.tv/AOF at 8 o'clock in the morning here on the Pacific Coast Pacific Standard Time to find us live. So I want to thank you again, and we have a returning friend, a friend of our family, and a friend of mine, a personal friend of mine, Tom Ackermann. He's an artist by trade. That's his professional life. That's how he spent his life. But he's a thinker and a person. This is what takes art, though, is artists actually think and put it into something that we can see or touch or feel. So thank you, Tom, for joining us.
Good morning, Lonnie. I appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me back on your program.
Yeah, I really like it. I like our conversations. I think you bring up some key questions because you always talk about the conscience, doing the right thing, taking the right action. That's, in fact, what Guy McPherson's fundamental thing is, take right action. But, where we're at, we were talking about before we came on the show how the YouTube and this alternative media, you're beginning to think that it doesn't really matter? You think that extends to anywhere on the internet or on just the YouTube venue?
Well, what I mentioned to you was that it appears that YouTube, when I go on my YouTube channel, I sign in, and YouTube presents me with recommendations, things that I should look at. And it's quite extraordinary. The recommendations they have for me is a litany of doom, depravity, despair, the worst of the worst, the pedophiles who are running the place. The control system is
That's
coming.
That's because of who you follow. Like, the what's that guy that you got attacked for defending? What's his name? The one that they hate, the Catholic guy up in Canada. What's that guy's name that you defend?
Kevin Annett.
That's why you get those types. If you want to skew that, this is interesting. Just put in smiling, funny videos or kid videos, and they'll start sending you those recommendations. It's based on what you watch.
No, I think I know what you mean. I understand that. But the point is that they don't censor anything that I want to see. And even if it's at the expense of their own system that is running everything. It's kind of like the snake eating its own tail. That's what I thought, in the sense that, if you look back in history and you look at, in terms of art history even, Hitler had to get rid of all the thinkers and people that were contrary to his system. The artists were either thrown in jails or they had to flee. He ridiculed them, he hounded them, he stalked them. So there is a development here that I find quite extraordinary. I know what you mean, that the search engine on YouTube, the algorithms suggest these things to me, but there is nothing apparently that you can produce that would threaten this control system. That's what I thought to myself. Although I do believe there is intense, people are being scrutinized and tracked for what it is that they do. I think this has been covered by a lot of different people that talk about the surveillance and the Assange story about revealing things. Some, I guess, are a little more dangerous than others, but ultimately our contribution, our content appears not to matter. I don't believe we are a threat with our proclamations, that if we say Fukushima is the worst, most epic event in the history of human life on this planet, it doesn't seem really have much of an impact on the controllers.
No, because they know that, frankly, to be honest, this is what Heidi Lambert talks about. She says, look, Fukushima, yeah, it's really bad, but when you consider how many bombs they dropped on the Pacific and in their testing, plutonium lasts forever. And they did how many bombs? Fukushima was just like the explosion that made us pay attention. That's really what that was.
But I think that plant is probably in real time producing 1,000 bombs a day or something. It's like the amount of radiation coming out of this exploded plant and all the materials that are disseminated over that area. It has to be surpass what has happened in the past. I cannot imagine this just being a few releases, right?
It's not. It's a different. This is Heidi's point, though, Tom, is that it's really not. It's not so. Yes, it's a lot like what they find outside the plant recently. 40, 45, 42 sieverts.
Yeah.
Sieverts, full sieverts.
Yes.
Outside the plant.
Five will kill you in a few hours. Yeah.
Right. So, but you know how much more was spread over. Look at the United States map of the nuclear bomb testing. The thing is, the plutonium lasts forever. This is not like, mine is more than yours. We had such a quantity in the time. I mean, the downside to this is what makes Fukushima the most critical, is it's nonstop continuous. At some point, the ocean doesn't have a fresh resource. At some point, it's going to get poisoned so bad. It is being poisoned so badly.
Well, according to Durnford, he's going to go back out on the water to document physically document those tide pools. And last time, he didn't see anything anymore.
Yeah, well, that's all up and down the coast.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we have the radiation. We know we had that radioactive plume in 2015 that they called the blob.
Yeah.
The blob is still here, folks. The blob just didn't mysteriously go away because we forgot to tell you about it again. You know what I mean? This is the thing. We are seeing, and then on top of that, we have increased pollution from other places. I mean, it's honestly, it is really sad what they're doing to our Mother Earth. What they're doing for
you and I understand this on an intuitive level, not just on an intellectual level. I believe that your own activism is motivated not just because your mind tells you, but there's something that you feel connected to that makes you understand this. It's how I think the good art is produced as well. It's not something that is rooted in our minds as an intelligent choice. It's something that is in something much more mysterious and ephemeral. And I think this is the same thing. The ability to connect to something I mean, I'm not sure. You have to have just barely a heart pounding to be able to connect to this event. I mean, I cannot understand how this isn't part of an entire population who intrinsically understands this. I've mentioned this. I've said this to you. I believe we all know. We all know on a certain level that this has happened. It's just that some people are willing to risk that intuitive part of them and say, yes, this is actually happening. And what is it that wakes up the part in us that is, I suppose, I guess for lack of a better word, it's that ephemeral world that motivates and inspires us to do things that we had no idea about when we wake up in the morning. It's like I go to the studio and I honestly don't know, for the most part, what's going to happen during the day. And that's very exciting, actually. It's like there's a Kabbalistic phrase for this, and it says, my peace is uncertainty. And this is something that really struck me, because in order to make any meaningful work, any art that someone else can chew on, there has to be this risk, this kind of I don't know feeling. I trust something. It comes out of an area in myself that I trust implicitly.
So you're going to the heart of why people don't talk about Fukushima or any of the pollution. Like, they'll mention it in passing, but they don't call their Congress people. They don't take action. They refuse to protest. They don't stand up. They don't think it's that big important because of security. Because, their sense of internal security, they feel like if they don't feel like they're in control, so not talking about that allows them to have a sense of certainty.
Well, my approach to this isn't so much in terms of determining what anyone should do once they have this sense. I think this is one of the prohibitive things, that the feeling of an obligation, you need to do a specific thing. I stay away from making pronouncements about how a person should handle their insights, because it's like when I went to art school, the best teachers pointed me in a direction, but then I took the steps I needed to take in order to realize what it was that I wanted to do with that understanding, or they encouraged something in me that allowed me to proceed without, I understand what you're saying. Here is a plan for you. If you don't have a plan, call your congressman. Do all the things that could actually, make a difference. But I think from my position, and maybe it takes a commitment to have found something in one's own life that is very solid at the core of your being. So let's just say that most people have not found their calling, no matter how old they are, whether they're 20 years old, 15, or 80 years old. I'm assuming that in my commentary that most people have not found their calling, which is why we're having this awareness. What I said about the control system is no longer threatened by anything we produce, because fundamentally people have lost that sense of calling in themselves, and then a person is easily manipulated. You don't really insist on yourself being the gauge for what it is that goes on around you. The external world becomes literally that. It's all about the external world rather than the internal world. And I think this is that's what I thought when I looked at the recommendations, that the system that you and I understand to be quite, I don't know what to call it. It's very diabolical. I refer to it as the culture of death. I see this to be so degenerate now. The level of interest that people have in meaningless activities and meaningless pursuits. This has gone to a level where that system is so much in control. It's so capable of withstanding any attack. It's quite extraordinary. And I always come back to this, that the idea of conscience is our last line of defense, that ultimately, whatever it is a person chooses to do, it needs to come out of that center of wanting to do the right thing. And we learn as we go along. I mean, it's a day-to-day struggle to stay in this focus in myself to do the right thing. It's not something that just falls in your lap. Oh yeah, you know, I know the truth. I know everything. It works that way. No, it takes an effort to noodle on things and reflect and think and be mindful to make something that any action that I do, no matter how insignificant, comes out of this feeling of I want to do the right thing. And this is something that I find, I suppose that there's a level of frustration, and Guy McPherson probably feels this way. There's a sort of withdrawal because I think for you and me, if I don't know if I speak for you on this, but I feel extremely hurt, like a hurt, not just anger, but I feel like a hurt that this is happening. Yeah. I understand this. You know, that
a deep betrayal. It's a very deep betrayal.
This
because we were indoctrinated. In fact, it's worked for humanity to rely on these systems and to rely on governments and things like that, and to believe that the system will work. This is full on the first time where the whole entire civilization has been hoodwinked, so to speak. Because that when you realize what happened at Fukushima and how much they covered it up, and then you start on digging and figuring out how much more they are uncovering up, and then how much more they're just saying in plain open that nobody's even listening to. And if you even dare speak up, guess what? You're probably going to have some type of a coinky-dinky accident. Excuse my nieces in the background, you guys. They just woke up. They're trying to be quiet. It's not so easy. This is what happens when they tell babies to be quiet.
New life comes, new life continues.
This is why we do it, though, folks. It's for our children. We want our children to have a beautiful life. They deserve to have clean rivers. They deserve to be able to drink the water.
They do not deserve to be saddled with this kind of a hurt that they had no part in. This is something we need to resolve, Lonnie. I find myself like personally responsible. I mean, in the sense of my own life, that I don't contribute to more of this hurt. And I think a lot of people don't take this serious enough because, like I say, even in a day-to-day sense, well, primarily in a day-to-day sense, that as long as we contribute through complicity or actual acts that contribute to this overall hurt that goes out into this amorphous body that is like this soul, this spirit we're a part of, that's called humanity, and then all of life, we literally have an effect. Each, you know, when you say each voice matters, it's not just the idea of a voice, is that our entire being is contributing to something in a much larger system that we're a part of. We're not individuals in that sense. Mm-hmm. We are contained within something, and our actions are very important in the sense that are you going to be someone responsible for yourself, your actions in the sense of conscience, or are you going to comply with the depravity and the degenerates that are trying to take our birthright away from us? So this is
there you go again, Tom. You said that word, trying. I hate that word. We got to eliminate it from our vocabulary. I'm picky about words, and that's the one word. It's the reason that we're failing. It's the reason because we have the try mentality. We have to really figure out a way to engage enough people and give them the courage to face this and face it without fear, that it is something important that we each have to look at.
Well, try, I suppose, what I mean is to actually make an effort. It's rather than saying, I'll just withdraw into my shell when I say try, I say to make the effort. I suppose I can adjust it and implore, encourage, whatever that might be, rather than try to make an effort to get to this position where somehow this begins to make sense. It's not like there is nothing fixed at the end of this. There is no specific action that I could recommend to anyone other than get in touch with understanding this is happening. People, this is actually happening on our watch. We're giving a polluted, damaged planet to the next generations for maybe 1,000 generations. How can anyone live with that idea? How could we not, in some way, feel extremely motivated, whatever it is that we're good at in our lives, like I say, the calling, how can we motivate ourselves? And in our conversations when you talk about this, I mean, I just keep racing in my mind because I have a person on the other side who's actually listening. I don't talk to many people anymore, and I get very animated. And what I always think about, Lonnie, is the thing that gets me through my day is living with a sense of meaning. Something that there is no specific activity attached to that, other than when I leave the studio, I have actually most of the time, if not all the time, I have this sense of meaning in my life, which doesn't allow me to withdraw into a shell. And if I have any kind of criticism on a person like Guy McPherson, it might be that he appears to have withdrawn into a shell. I may be wrong about that, but the feeling is...
I don't think you followed Guy McPherson, do you?
Well, I'm saying, I'm not picking on it. I'm just saying that to remove yourself to an island and live in a small group, I suppose, yeah, if that's what you feel you need to do. But I'm just saying anyone that doesn't have that sense of meaning on a daily basis, it's going to make it very hard to actually follow through on this impulse that we talk about all the time. I mean, this sense of commitment to making this thing, not to saddle the next generations with our dirt. Like we're a bunch of baby doomers. We're not baby boomers. We're doomers in the way we're.
Well, in a way, that's real. It is. People say doom and gloom, and Guy McPherson says doom and happy face. Because look, the reality is it's grim. You need to prepare for it. Doesn't mean we can't come up with a solution, but at the current situation that we're in, if you look at the reality of the situation, I mean, his time frame is very short. But even if you give it 100 years, that's a long time. On the current trajectory, it's not going to last 100 years. That's a long time.
No, it's impossible. Because,
I mean, especially with Fukushima, as we know, Fukushima is non-stop. It's the gaping hole.
Yes,
I mean,
continuous.
Even Chernobyl is still not, quote, fixed, but it's not on the water and on the edge of the Pacific. And it's not non-stop, and they're not lying. And, every chance they get, they have something lying, So.
Yeah, of course. I think that there are some really powerful obstacles. Do I have a sense of hope about this? I have to. I find myself in a situation where the knee jerk is to withdraw into my shell, never open my door and windows again, and just live my world. I was in some way, but that is not an option, considering that I contribute, like I say, I feel I contribute to this expansive soul that we are a part of, and I have elaborate thoughts on eternity. Like I say, I feel I have a romance with eternity in my work. I see myself connected to something that is physically. I mean, after I'm gone, there's going to be quite a bit of my work that I leave behind. I just, hopefully it'll mean something to people that see it. But this sense of continuity, it's not just physically what I leave behind, but a sense that I have lived up to a potential in me, that I worked at it. And like I say, there is no result to this. There is an uncertainty in all of this, but at least I'm not contributing. Whenever I try to reflect. And I say try because it's difficult. I miss it quite often, Lonnie. I miss it. That's why I feel it's like I'm not going to impose, like, I can't fail in this. I fail quite a bit. I mean, I see it in my paintings and I recycle them or I store them, I roll them up. So I know as a process, Picasso said he said, when I put a painting on the wall in a gallery, you're not getting any more questions. You have my answers. And that's how I feel. Once my work goes out, I stand behind it once it is completed. But in my process, there's a whole range of I guess, success in the work as I would imagine it to be, successful or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because you think in the terms of an artist. about how you sort of stand behind your work, but that's being an artist. This is an interesting perspective. You talk about a sense of purpose, right? I mean, this is in fact like Heidi. I would love to do an interview with you and Heidi together to talk about this, because she is a survivor. She grew up in Hanford. Her dad was personally affected by the Manhattan Project. Personally, her family is forever affected. I mean, she says, look, let's be real about what they've done. And this is part of the conversation about we have to face the reality, because at this point, they don't have solutions for the nuclear contamination. Their solution is to bury it. That's their solution, folks. Their solution is to bury it, and almost always they bury it on site. And where do they build stuff? On earthquake faults. What's that going to say to our future? This is the insane part about it all. We're the first generation who has to really ever deal with this in the history of humanity as we know it.
That's very daunting. That's a daunting. I think you nailed something there. I find this extraordinary. Like when I say on our watch, this has never occurred to anyone in this format. I mean, there have been devastations. If you think about the Black Death in the 14th century, I mean that lasted, let's say, 2 or 3 years, and then 2/3 of the population was decimated. But you have a revival, and you're through it, right? But this is so extraordinary from the point of view that we physically know this. This is not surmise, people. This is not like me being a flake or saying something. This shit lasts for millions of years that is being produced. It cannot be, we may be able to contain it for now, but there is no resolution on how to eradicate this stuff from our planet. So this has never occurred. This is the first time in the history of human life that this has occurred on our watch. Like, we're at that age.
Yes.
If we get through this, Lonnie, and we're capable, if I'm correct on this eternity side of things, right? Like, there's a lot of hissing. What is that? You hear that?
That's static. Yes, that's static.
Is that normal?
No, but you're in Canada. The Queen does not like you talking about these things.
We're being interrupted with static. Okay. So,
if you want to hang up and try to call again, but it might end. I mean, if you have other programs open, you might want to close them. That might help. It might help. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, we are using the Skype venue through your computer, so excuse us, listeners. See if we can fix our technical problems on the air. Okay. CCY.TV. Because we need people to donate to this place.
Good idea. I love quite a number of programs.
Me too.
Jules' dissertations are always very intense. She ratchets up her presentations. You have to be ready for her. I like Alan Watt too, regularly, yes. And there's another guy, I think.
Geoengineering Watch and Nuclear Hot Seat.
I like Behind the Woodshed, the guy with the crickets. He's a lawyer. He's awesome. This guy is amazing. He's giving us a lot of background on how to fight the bastards in real time through the legal system, right? Mm-hmm. I've listened to him occasionally and find him quite... Yeah, so there are quite a number of presenters on UCY TV.
But this goes to the heart of the opening statement. Does it really matter? Like, they just let us say whatever, you know what I mean? And I think it just does matter. This is why I do this radio show. That's why I talk to people and get them to... We have these open conversations. And I really appreciate Heidi's point of view of like, look, this is not new. They've been doing this to us since the 40s. The thing is, we're waking up from it. It has the brainwashing. Look how thorough it was. It took Fukushima to wake up most people. Fukushima had to happen. And what had to make them really bring people together was not the event of Fukushima. It was the way the entire worldwide governments have just ignored it and said, Oh, that's Japan's problem. That's even the University of Oregon. Mary Wood said, "Well, that's far away. We don't deal with that. That has nothing to do with us." Because I called them up. I wanted a class action lawsuit, so I called up the University of Oregon. I know they have an environmental law division.
And what was the result of that?
That's what she said. It's too far away. It's none of our. We don't have anything to do with it.
Right. Okay. So there is a disconnect.
This is the caveat here, Tom. What they do with this, and let me also be clear. It is, as John Goffman reminded us, it is not just the nuclear contamination that's happened since the nuclear age. It is the chemical pollution, because the nuclear and the chemicals go together. So this unleashing of uranium and uranium sludge is unprecedented. We've never really had this in the history of humanity, and they knowingly are causing harm. There have been many studies that they know are valid. By John Goffman, Linus Pauling won a Nobel Peace Prize for it in the 50s.
Yeah, I think, Lonnie, that the way I interpret this, or the context I would create for this, is that the external world represents our inner world, or more precisely, how we individually and collectively have not done very well on our inner world. That part in us that resists when things aren't going the right direction. So we have an unprecedented age of producing, as you say, the chemicals. It's not just the nuclear criminal bunch, but all the science has this mind, this collective mind, which is represented quite often in the idea of science. Not just religion now, but science has become the new religion, and it's driving us into a direction that is the worst possible direction we could have taken. But I insist that this is a representation of a collective inner world. What people are dealing with on the inside is allowing this to happen on the outside, the external world. And if you want to go back, I've mentioned this maybe even on your show a few times, that this began, in my mind, in terms of civilization and culture, way back, a character called Akhenaten. He was one of the pharaohs. He was the father of Tutankhamun. He was the son of, Akhenaten, Amenhotep. Anyway, there's four of them. And basically what he suggested to or forced his population to accept is that he was the direct liaison to the omnipotent being. And there you have the divine right of kings, which basically separated the population from the source, that which gives us our strength, what I call our birthright. And, this is my own sort of, I suppose, maybe Jungian interpretation of our circumstances, that the external world reflects the lack of work we individually and collectively are not doing, that inner world. Does that make sense to you?
Half of it.
Are you there?
Yeah.
I couldn't hear you. There was a silence.
Well, I'm muting it because there's children running around me here. I'm up
okay.
To our listeners, I'm up in a Federal Way this today and tomorrow. And I had planned on staying at an Airbnb so I'd have some quiet during the show. But that actually was did not work out. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I was not disconnected.
No, you were not. I was listening, but I was sparing you the noise and the cooing of a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Okay, how they
and the coughing.
How are they making out so far? Are you keeping an eye on them or what?
No, they're just wandering around. They have a little 1-bedroom house, so.
Yeah. Have they had their breakfast?
Yes, they're in the process. That's what they're trying to do, quietly, so we can be on the radio.
But my point is, when you talk about the circumstances.
I think but see, this is the thing. I think what loses a lot of people is many people don't have a sense of purpose in life. They can't connect to that. That feels so far away. But they are enraged about what's going on in Fukushima, and they are feeling very when they look at, and they're right, when they start digging into it, and then you look at the chemicals they're spraying on us in the sky, what they're doing to our food supply. I mean, how literally every portion of our life has been taken over by a system that, and I think this is when you say, like, Guy McPherson, he's sort of withdrawn. I think you are incorrect, because he's gone to live on a cooperative farm where people come and go. He connects with lots of people and lots of young people, and it's about sustainable living. It's about living sustainably. So they're living on like a cooperative where people do what they can do.
And he's encouraging. He's very encouraging to people around him, obviously.
I don't know. I honestly have not been around him. I've listened to him on interviews on, his podcast, and I've followed him. And I started following Guy McPherson's philosophy because I met a young man from Ohio through the Post-Ignorance Act. His name is Drew. And, he basically, he's like, I also found this guy, Guy McPherson, and I was very angry. I thought that was irresponsible of Guy to tell people that we're going to not live past 50 years.
Yeah.
You know what? But you know what? It is kind of the reality. Like, if we don't face this, and frankly, I think the fact that Fukushima has hit the wall and people are still paying attention to it has made the overlords, I guess that's what we'll call them, start to face this, because now they're starting to come out saying that the remedies, they know that phytoremediation is the answer to nuclear pollution. They've known this for a long time, but they're starting to use it up at Hanford. They're starting to develop that as that could be a big business, That's why Chuck Heinemann's business, Mid-America Restore, he sells these really great microbes that, frankly, can heal all the radioactive contamination that we have. That's what my Charlotte Anthony, who does, she's a permaculture specialist, and she was like, look, if everybody just composted their food, just compost, keep the meat products out, but compost your food, make your own dirt, start putting it out there. We can make our own, and start just actually really focusing on that. We could really remediate the earth. It's going to take a lot. It's going to be, and we are going to, unfortunately, we're in for some pretty serious shockwaves.
But that's phenomenal that you bring this up and that people have actually understood how to mitigate this almost impossible situation as I see it. I'm not sure if this is a form of technology. Just I find this so elegant in the sense that it's biological. It's not technical from a machine point of view. It's a solution through another life form. Is that, have I understood that correctly?
It's not another life form.
Well, the biological remediation.
Yeah, what it does is it's kind of like they've discovered that, like mushrooms, for example. Mushrooms
That's a
are
life
like
form. That's a life form.
These fungus, this is what made them start to realize it. They're like a big computer. They've discovered that they're big computers, basically. They're little living computers that basically go into the dirt and say, okay, what does this dirt need? Okay, my body will create the synthesis or recreate whatever it needs to give it that.
And neutralize the isotopes?
Yes, that's why they absorb they don't do that. They absorb radioactivity. They draw it in.
What happens to the radioactivity once they...
Well, actually, there's a couple of...
Hello? Hi. Are you there?
Yes.
Checking. Testing. Calling mission control. Calling mission control. This is Neil standing on the moon.
It's Neil.
It's
no.
Neil on the moon. Do I see stars? No. Buzz, did you see any stars? Collins. No. I wasn't looking. I didn't see any stars. No, there wasn't any stars. Mission control. Are you there?
Yes, mission control is here. Sorry. Just trying to spare you guys my knees.
It all ties in, by the way, Lottie. It all ties in, right? What I just my little comedy tirade here on Neil and Buzz.
But this is exactly it. Is how that's the point. We have no control over it, right? Like that's really the biggest issue.
Can I make a suggestion though about that? You say purpose. I refer to it as meaning. Purpose is another version of meaning, I suppose. But how do I create meaning in my life? And I'll give you a very simple, the most fundamental notion that I have experienced. I don't think there is anything more fundamental, and I bring it up constantly, which I harp on it. I bring it up. I talk about it, and that is to care. Just care about someone, something. Just that feeling that I truly care. And if it means you have to manufacture it for the first year, so go ahead, care about something. And the results are going to be phenomenal. The sense of meaning, when you truly care for someone, something, it really creates an entirely new way of living on this planet, because the hearts have been sucked out of humanity, and the ability to care has been reduced to a very few people. Like, people have decided that it's not important. You just grab, like an amoeba, you go over a morsel of food, you ingest it, and then you puke it out at the back end. This is sort of the life forms, a human being that is incapable or unwilling to care. Basically, you're grabbing a morsel and you're shitting it out the back end. That's how I look at it. So purpose, meaning, try caring for about something. And I'm not saying what it is you got to care about. I'm just saying begin to care, and then everything begins to fall into place, I think. You make the right choices, and you follow, what you say, Lonnie. You call your representatives. You do the things that you're feeling you want to do because you care, not because somebody
Although
else.
I did read an article this morning from, what was it? I think BuzzFeed, that talked about what happens when you call your representative. Oh my gosh, it pretty much doesn't go anywhere. That's pretty much, it's pretty interesting how they handle all these constituent contacts and what happens if you really actually begin to make a difference, then you get shoveled into some higher level. Like, they basically gives them a sense, and we've known this, it just gives people a sense that they have right to surveil Americans now. Uh-huh. I mean, the surveillance state has taken over. That's what Edward Snowden was talking about, right? And this is what Fukushima really brought to the forefront, really, because look, the secrecy law in Japan is so draconian. It's inhumane. To be honest, the way they're handling Fukushima is a crime against humanity.
Yeah, draconian is a good word, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Because if a journalist even asks about Fukushima and starts looking about what really happened and what the levels real, that's why that story that they're telling us, 42 sieverts, they don't know why they found 42 sieverts outside the containment area. Really?
Yeah.
That's what they're telling us. Much less the homeless population. How many thousands of people have they just dropped off in the streets of Tokyo, highly contaminated, to, spread their love, I mean, every coroner who handles a homeless person in Tokyo probably has a much higher risk. They're probably not, because of the secrecy laws, they probably can't even test the guy for radioactivity. But
there again, we're confronted again with a physical and external world that will, when you talk about people calling their representatives and the effectiveness of that, I would not discourage anyone from acting in any way whatsoever, because we can't always determine the results. But what I always feel that, personally, I've said this to people that get in my way. I told them that I'm on a mission, so get the hell out of my way. If there's somebody that is not on my side 100%, I don't want to have them around me, because once a person feels the sense of whatever, that meaning, that commitment, and it's primarily in my art. I mean, frankly, Lonnie, there are a lot of people that have opinions every day. I mean, I expose myself in my work, and even people that appear to be on my side are quite maybe perplexed or confused, or even some antagonism. I find that people that, and I have to really measure this because I have very low tolerances for people that are not on my side. I just sort of shove them to the side. I want nothing to do with them. So, but that's part of being on a mission, that you commit yourself. I feel committed to what I'm doing. And I don't let anybody get in my way. That's like what I've also learned. It's like when, even if you're a young person that decides you really love to do something and you pursue it, don't let anybody get in the way. You're on a mission, and just embrace it, love it.
I would say that doesn't have to apply just to young people. I think that's to every person. If you feel something like that, you just do it, because persistence, what do they say? Perseverance brings success. That's the reality. The more you attempt to do it, a baby doesn't just get up and start walking. A baby falls and crawls and does all kinds of things. But they don't stop because they can't. They think about walking like the big people. And they don't just stop because, I can't do it. They keep going.
They're on a mission. They're on a mission to absorb every ounce of life at every moment. This is and yeah, you're right. It's not just young people. It's everybody. If you're 80 years old and all of a sudden you have this epiphany that, like Jim Carrey, did you hear Jim Carrey carry on about the Illuminati and all that? Did you come across him?
I keep seeing the headlines. I've clicked on some videos and I never quite get a video where they give other bits. So it's like, I just don't have the patience. I just
It's an interesting development, I think, out of that cesspool called Hollywood. And he appears to be really fed up with his entire life, the way it has evolved and shaped. I always felt him quite manic in his films, the cable guy, and with the mask. He was the guy with the mask. He had a very manic personality, and he's been listening to this Tolle guy a lot. Have you come across Tolle?
Bertard Tolle, you mean the guy that wrote The Secret?
Tolle, he's sort of the...
Eckhart Tolle or Tolle Eckhart, one of the two. It goes one way or the other.
Yeah,
yes.
German guy, Eckhart Tolle. He's sort of the New Age swami of everything. It's kind of like people, and if they get something out of them, all the more power to them. I find all that stuff to be
so. Did Jim Carrey say that he himself had been part of the Illuminati?
Yes, he says he was part of a really degenerate system that's so ugly and brutal and barbarian. He couldn't take it anymore. He was up to his eyeballs in it, and he finally realized what a waste of a life he's led. And he's come out, and he's basically, my sense of it is, he's completely discarded everything that he's done up until now, and says, I am no longer me. There is no me, he says. There is no ego. I am vibrating in a magnificent universe that is...
Yeah, I heard that part, but he didn't talk about himself being in the Illuminati.
He said he was part of the system, yes.
The system. I wonder what that means.
That is, he complied. Basically, what he's saying is he's disgusted with the fact that he actually complied with what it is that. Come on, he was functioning in Hollywood for 30 years almost, or something like that. He had to. So
this is the non-sexual Me Too movement, right? Of Jim Carrey starting the non-sexual Me Too movement.
What is that? What do you mean?
The Me Too movement, it's all about women when they come out against the sexual harassment that they've had to deal with at work. Okay. And, to further their careers, it's that whole Me Too movement.
Oh, I see.
Or just to talk, or like, if, this whole thing about being sexually harassed. And so people do that hashtag Me Too. That's big in the States here anyways. So what I was saying is relating it to Jim Carrey. He's essentially coming out because this is coercion and harassment. That's what he's saying. In order for him to keep working for the last 30 years, he had to participate in their little sick game. Because I'm sure he went, he's like, yeah, this is no big deal. Because he wasn't into it, but they made him participate. And he probably just said, yeah, I'm done.
I suspect it's more than just coercion. I suspect there are some very dark entities operating out of that city that do nasty, murderous things. And he may have actually been privy to, maybe not part of, but aware of, and closed his eyes to it, and he can't live with it. It's like, when I imagine soldiers going into the Rocky Desert, peppering people with depleted uranium bullets and coming home, and then you wonder why they have PTSD. How can you live with yourself after having done something to people that have no connection to you whatsoever, another life form, and you viciously murder it? And I think this is like, we do, I'm debating whether to publish a video I've been working on called Betrayal. It's like psyops and betrayals, but I won't stop to trust people. This is a very difficult thing, I find, when you get burned and then you want to withdraw after something happens. But he's been burned badly, and he's come out and he said, this is happening, this is terrible, what I was a part of, and I'm a new person. I don't want to be this way anymore. And I have to laud him for it, Lonnie. I have to say that somebody stepping out and saying, my life has been miserable in the way that people think of me as an icon, and I'm wonderful. And he says there are no icons. There are just, I don't know, what does he say? He has this new age expression for it that comes right out of this Toli mouth, which is why I find those swamis and gurus of insight and higher dimensions to be quite irritating most of the time, because they say the same thing over and over again and never are able to nail it. For me anyway, they never nail it. That's just my opinion.
Well, the Toli guy, I think maybe I just hit the end of tilt by the time he came out. I think by the time he came out, I had read every single freaking self-help book there was. I'm guarantee you.
Yeah, okay.
I was 30 and I decided to be my own best parent. So where do you go? So I listened, my children listened to Brian Tracy's, what was it? The Science of Self-Esteem. And there was a couple of them about building yourself up. I used to work 45 minutes away, so I had them in a daycare center near my work. So they would listen to that. We'd be driving up the freeway, and I'd listen to that. So my children got indoctrinated with this self-help stuff because I was really, I think I've shared this with my listeners, a survivor of severe abuse. And so I decided to heal myself just at the time when the self-help industry got big, right? And I don't think that's an accident. I think my family situation was common. What our culture did after the 50s and 60s was attempt to heal. Like people were in the 80s and 90s were big on healing. Yeah. People wanted to heal from all the pain, all the suffering. And they sort of, it is the hurt, and there is that hurt. And so now we have these techniques. We have EFT. We have really great books that have been written. There's plenty of self-healing things. The hard reality is that we're still being hurt. The batterers are still in charge. And I think that's why in this country right now, at least, the culmination of Trump being the president is exactly what you get when you have batterers in charge. You put a batterer in the White House. He's right now defending this guy who beat two of his ex-wives up. Uh-huh. But you were right. It's about that sense of purpose. When people get a feeling that we cannot take this anymore, we're going to stand up, even in the face of diversity or extinction. We're going to stand up because what little life we have left on this planet, we want it to be great. We want our grandchildren to have beautiful green trees and blue skies. We want them not to be sick their entire lives.
And I think you bring up Trump. It's futile for people to look at the leadership or the icons in our cultures to take care of things. We have to do that personally. We cannot stand by if there is an injustice. We have to stand up and defend the people that are vulnerable or that are being abused. And whether that is, Trump uses that Twitter thing. I don't have Twitter stuff, but he's using this very effectively to make, I guess, people feel like they're involved in his life or something like that. It's irrelevant. Whatever he says doesn't mean anything if we comply. We have to change our own lives. That's the only way that we can counter this abuse and the hurt that is continuing on a level that is, unprecedented in terms of the physical world is being so devastated by the events. What you bring up, the chemical pollution, the nuclear pollution, all the levels of destruction that people know about. And the only way to stop it is to begin to feel this meaning. Like I say, we need to feel meaning in our lives. And the only way the fundamental building block of meaning is to care. So, and then, I really encourage people to find their mission, that calling, the thing that really makes them want to get up in the morning and apply all that energy, because humanity has enormous amount of energy. I mean, that spirit that lives in people is tremendous. I give you an example of another life form. My 20-year-old cat is toward the end of its life, and the determination this cat has is teaching me an amazing lesson for me, how determined this cat is to survive and to live out, and just the spirit in this animal is phenomenal, and very, very thin. She used to be like 16 pounds. And now it's like she's maybe 6 pounds or something like that.
Wow.
Or less 5, yeah. But what a lesson.
Well, that's part of the end of her life cycle. That's part of honoring death and letting that be okay and giving her comfort. But
and
that the whole thing about,
time.
but that enjoying life, like being determined to just keep enjoying life no matter. And I think we see that in humanity, because for all the pain and suffering that has gone on to be honest, there has been a lot of cruelty dished out to the American children who have been the victims of the nuclear testing thing. Like, it caused a lot of disease. It made a lot of people's parents schizophrenic, caused them to do a lot of things that there has been a lot of damage done that has not even been calculated. But what's interesting is people's spirit, determination to just continue to be. This is why they don't want to pay attention, because they just want some peace. They want some happiness. They want to wake up and feel that their reason for getting up in the morning is not to save the planet, but it's just to enjoy the planet. To enjoy the planet, not save it. That's a heavy responsibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Don't burden yourself with that responsibility. You can determine your own life. Whatever it is that is immediately around you is what you're in control of. And out of that comes, you become inspirational to others that will do the same thing. And in a matter of a very short time, we have a spirit that is alive and well again in humanity. This is what I am. This is my positive, my optimism here, that this can turn around very quickly, Lonnie. This could turn around very, very fast.
But on that, we have 1 minute left, and I want to ask you real quickly. 1 minute. I know, it went quickly. What are you going to do on 3/11/2018? Are you going to protest in front of the Japanese embassy somewhere?
The Japanese embassy. I think the closest I have is the Rotary Club in my town.
You might have to do some driving.
I don't know yet.
Well, I'll put a plug in your ear, because that's what we need to do, and I think we need to demand to end the secrecy laws in Japan over this. This is a worldwide contamination. Yeah. So, Tom, thank you for joining us. My goodness, it's been a really fast hour, and thanks, listeners, for all the noise in the background, the waking up morning noises that's going on around us, but it worked out, and I really appreciate you joining us. Tom, I hope you join us again.
I will. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and don't give in to the hurt.
Put your courage feet on, you guys. Take care. Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, Lonnie.